when you mentioned it, I really wanted to talk about this because I don't think I fully understand this bone and these sets of bones around it, the pelvis. And, until I started looking into FRC, researching again for this show, realized how much just in the hips itself as well, like how big of an area that gets thrown off. You're talking about standing, we kind of are asymmetrical, but we lean towards our right side. We're a little more
Yeah.
right dominant. And I know that affects people as well in their hips and the pelvis itself. So why don't you even start with the pelvis? 'Cause I don't even think people know much about
Yeah.
that
So
they
so
have
the
one.
so just to expand a little bit, so like from the PRI lens, which is Postural Restoration Institute, and that's just another system of training and physical therapy in a way. But essentially, they've done a really good job of, researching and defining and then applying the idea that like our organs are not symmetrical, right? So like your right lung is actually bigger than your left lung. So if you think about that, you're going to end up breathing more into your right side, and then you're going to end up more on that right side. You can even get so much as to relying only on expanding that right side, and then your left lung over there is just weak, small, and what ends up happening is your left side, your rib cage actually opens up. So when it opens up, we can't contain pressure on the left side, which is going to affect your shoulders, going to affect your hips, it's going to affect everything. So that's really important to understand that we're not symmetrical. Another way that we're not symmetrical is actually in the representation of our brain. So the right side of our brain is represented more than the left side. So just another really clear example that we're going to be biased that side. So that's something that you really need to kind of understand eventually when you're going through training, because it does play a huge role. Now, in terms of the ribs and the pelvis, the most important thing that we're talking about is the ability to maintain IAP, which is really a fancy way of saying intra-abdominal pressure or just stability in your midline. Now, what happens is your rib cage up top, there's a muscle called the diaphragm. Okay, it's like a big balloon in your stomach.
Hmm.
Again, asymmetrical, so it's not going to be the same on the left and the right. And then we have our pelvic floor, which is in our pelvis, kind of the bottom. And you see a lot of people having issues with breathing, stress, pooping, urinating, all kinds of issues, lower back pain, sacrum pain. So all kinds of stuff like that happening, and it's dysfunctional. So when we talk about this, we want the top and the bottom to actually compress together and be able to expand. So it's almost your midline is able to come together and go away. Now that creates this pressure and this stability in the midline that actually protects our lower back. So if we think about what's the most common thing to get hurt, lower back is going to be huge on there. Everybody's going to have pain at some point. Now, the other thing that happens is people don't know how to breathe properly, which is going to directly affect and just really just torment the ribs and the pelvis. Because if I'm walking around with my chest up because someone told me I have military posture and I can't create stability in my midline because my ribs are all flared up and my my lower back is arched, which is tipping my pelvis forward, there's going to be issues with everything. And you can have tons of people who look at your shoulder and say, oh, your shoulder's the issue. Work on your shoulder for months and never correct the midline, and then end up with no results in this kind of pain loop going back and forth and never really adding any capacity. So the idea that we need to have our rib cage be able to stay over our pelvis and then dynamically stay over our pelvis as we move different ways so that we can maintain that pressure in there.
So is that
That
kind of
is
that spine tucked, like form, like with that
No,
diaphragm?
well, that's the other thing is, like I said, dynamically. So, like, if I was to posterior tilt, which is basically what you're saying, like tuck my butt under me, then my rib cage would have to react to that as well. Or even more importantly, I would be able to have my rib cage in a multitude of different options with my pelvis in a multitude of different options and still maintain stability. And that's really like the end of the spectrum when you're really killing it, is when you have different options. Those things can separate and come together well, but you never lose the strength and stability that is created there in that midline for protection.
And all right, so both of these, if we're not in that proper position, is going to be constricting breathing. Like, and I know breathing's
Yes.
a massive one. I would say that people, it's funny when you watch someone smoke a joint or something for the first time, and they're just like all of a sudden reflective on how little they're breathing, how focused they are in their breaths. Like, oh my God, I'm losing my breath. I'm choking.
Yeah.
It's like you just don't know how to breathe. It's okay. This is how
Yeah. So
poorly you breathe all the time.
So especially in this time, I mean, there's never been a better time, but obviously it has its own special implications right now. We're designed to breathe through our nose. So like something I tell all my clients is, unless you're running from a tiger, like you should be breathing in through your nose. So like if you breathe in through your mouth, you're in a panic mode. It's a flight or fight. If any you've ever seen someone have a panic attack, they're sitting there like that, they're shrugging, right? So like if
Mm.
I'm doing a workout and I'm doing something like a basic workout, for example, if you're doing something FRC, say I'm doing a shoulder car, so I'm just moving my shoulder through its full range of motion. Should I be in a panic mode? Absolutely not. If I'm in work, sitting down at my desk, should I be breathing through my mouth in a panic mode? Absolutely not. That is stress on your system. And then your boss comes, drops the TPA reports that you haven't finished. There's another level of stress. Then you go to basketball tomorrow, land on your knee. Guess what? That's all part of the puzzle. Just like what I'm saying. Just because I fix your ankle doesn't mean I fixed everything else that goes into this huge puzzle of why did you actually get hurt, or why are you not achieving the results you want. So breathing in through your nose is the number one thing. The other thing that we want to be able to do is actually bring our ribs down in. So like most people are caught in extension, so their ribs are flared up. If you can see the front of your ribs flared up and out, like you can actually see the bones, you're probably pretty flared up, man. And that there's going to be a lot of people that are like that. So
Yeah,
being
I'm
able to
checking it out right now.
exhale, there you go. So being able to exhale and actually bring them internal rotation, which is them coming together. So if you put your hands on your ribs and you exhaled, your ribs would come towards each other, your fingers would come towards each other. That would be your rib cage coming down. Now, when we breathe with our rib cage coming down in the front, the air takes the path of least resistance. So if you're able to have abs in the front that keep your ribs down, your air will go into your back. Here's something that's going to blow someone's mind that's never even thought about their breathing. Where are your lungs? Not in your belly. Okay, so like people think, oh, I've been working on my breathing, been doing belly breathing. Great. Where are your lungs? Not in your belly. So what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? Now, what I'm not saying is you can't breathe into your belly. What I am saying is if you lost the ability to breathe into your rib cage, specifically the backside of your rib cage, and even east and west, then we are in trouble. That should be one of the first things that's on your mind to really correct and really improve. And it will have the biggest effect on everything, especially your hips and your shoulders. Because when that relationship's messed up in the midline and it's not good, there's no options there, you're going to end up suffering at the neighboring joints. And that's a huge, huge deal. Now, what happens with FRC, if you're a coach listening here, oftentimes, like I said, you'll focus so much on those small details of how much my shoulder moves, how much my knee moves, but you'll never address their breathing. And that's kind of a huge mistake too. So that's why I kind of integrate a lot of different systems to kind of get to the outcome that I want. So if you were starting your breathing today, simply lay flat on your back, put your hands on your ribs, just get a little bit of feel in through your nose, and then exhale as long as you possibly can. What you're going to find out is you're going to see how much your ribs actually move. You want to get empty. So think about people go every single day and they try to PR their front squat. They try to PR their snatch. When was the last time you tried to PR your breathing? So how much can you inhale? Guarantee most people that are doing this, if they're listening, they're going to take a breath. They're going to get 2 seconds in. They're going to go, ooh, and it's just going to stop. And they can't get breath. They can't get air anywhere. Okay. Now, if we want to maintain articulation, which is like saying, and we want to maintain a joint, we want to maintain an area of our body, we want to get air there. We want to be able to get expansion there. That's one of the main things that you need. So what we can do is exhale fully, bring your ribs all the way down in the air, and then hold your breath. Again, same thing. Most people listening are going to get to 2 seconds, full panic mode, and then they might even go and breathe in through their mouth because they're not even used to holding their breath with their ribs down, because their ribs have never even been down until they started thinking about it today. So that's one of the easiest ways to make a big impact. We talk about shoulder rotation. We talk about all these different measurements that you can get in the shoulder and the hips. But when I can change your breathing for 10 minutes and your shoulder and your hip get better, now I'm really cooking. Now we're way ahead of the game. And then I can go work on your shoulder and hip and make them even better because they're starting in a better position than they would be before if you didn't address your breathing. Does that all make sense?
I think so. And if I could make it a little bit more lay, I would say,
Please.
normally even like when I think, it's like my core. I don't just think about my abs. I'm thinking hip flexors, hamstrings, your abdominals here, lower back, and like Achilles. Like that would be considered like, my base right there. But you're going even deeper and saying that I can't even work on those things, even like when we talked about the shoulder rotations and getting our cars going there. But we're talking about like not just to have your body in the proper positions to be able to take in even more to improve, not just with stress levels, but understanding that there's even a deeper core area that we have to work on, and that is the correlation between the rib cage, diaphragm, and pelvis.
Absolutely. So that's good. So
I'm
the number,
listening.
you can start anywhere, first of all, but if we're talking about the greatest impact, if I get you to breathe correctly, not only are you going to be stronger, your midline, your shoulders, and your hips are going to improve, but your stress is going to decrease. If your stress decreases outside of training, that means I can stress you more when training, which is the reverse of what people do, because they go, oh, I'm going to work out even harder today. I'm going to do 2 boot camps. I'm going to do 2 CrossFit classes. And by the way, I'm going to have nothing to de-stress. You know, I'm going to go for a bike ride, which is great. Walking, great. But again, you go for a walk, mouth breathing the whole time, you know, like you're going to have limited gains. You're going to hit a roadblock at some point. So addressing that breathing is everything up front. And it's not as simple as there's this one position that you need. It's as simple as the connection between the ribs and the pelvis to dynamically move in multiple positions is what we want. But that starts by getting the expansion and redirecting the airflow to where it wasn't getting. And because of the asymmetries of the body, this is the most common finding, is the front or the back of your left rib cage. So think your upper back on the left side and the front of your right. And if you've ever taken a posture picture and noticed that your right shoulder is lower and your left shoulder's higher, then hey, you fit into this most common pattern that you're going to see. So the right side is compressed down. Oftentimes the right shoulder is very limited because the whole entire compressed side is there, so there's space for the shoulder to move. And then the left side's weak because it can't contain and create pressure on the left side, and we're not getting any air into the upper back on the left side because again, the left lung is it's weaker, it's smaller, it just naturally is, especially if you haven't been working on it.